place. It's not borne out. And it's not borne out by the 10,000 farmers that buy genetically engineered seeds, because it's the most rapidly adopted technology in the history of agriculture. And these farmers are not controlled by Monsanto, and I want to keep the corporate stuff out and stick to the science, because that's a whole different issue. But the fact of the matter is that these farmers buy these seeds and plant these seeds because they're good for them, it's good for the soil, it's good for the environment, it's good for their business, and that's what they do. No one's forcing them. There's alternative seeds that they can use. And so many things that you said, Dave, we could talk about for the next 3 hours, but I just don't think that they're actually borne out by critical scientific data. BT has been used in organic agriculture for 75 years. BT locks in the same active ingredient in the bacillus spores that are used in organic agriculture. The active ingredient has been inserted into crops. It's the most studied protein probably on the face of this earth, and has been shown to have absolutely no harm to humans or animal consumption or to other plants. And in fact, the report just came out, National Academy of Sciences, is that the reduction of pesticides, USDA, in the United States because of the use of BT crops is down 15%. And so we're eliminating millions and millions of tons of pesticides in the environment by using these crops. And that's really the reasons why we're being able to use these things in agriculture. But I'd like to point out one last point. One of the biggest decreases in agricultural productivity is the assault on crops by insects, by viruses, by bacteria, by fungi. They can't run away. And it causes a tremendous decrease in agriculture. And so one has to deal with these things in a particular way. And I think that the use of BT is one way, but it's an old way. It's kind of like fixing something with a Model T Ford, driving a Model T Ford. We have much better technologies using much more precise genetic engineering, using natural genes from natural plants that are naturally resistant to these particular pests, and we can use genetic engineering to move them into crops to be able to have them fight off these particular pests and fungi and other kinds of things, and be able to maintain the crops and have the yields that we really need to sustain agriculture.
Well, thank you for those comments, Bob. And so I want to give Dave a chance to respond, and then I'm going to have one more question for each of you, and then we're going to go to the audience. So coming soon.
So we obviously have some disagreements here, but I'm just going to say Bob is resorting back to basic talking points from the biotech industry. And Bob was a spokesperson during Prop 37. The no side used him as a spokesperson, as a scientist, against the people of California who were fighting for mandatory labeling. Now that was Bob's choice to partake in that process, but I want to say yield drag is a significant problem for genetic engineering, and they know it. The Union of Concerned Scientists came out with a major report showing this. In 2013, the USDA also came out with a study showing that. But I want to just read this. I knew that we were going to get in a fact-checking issue here, so I'm just going to read this. It says, Monsanto's Director of Public Affairs, Brad Mitchell, says the main uses of GM crops are to make them insect-tolerant and herbicide-tolerant. They do not inherently increase yield. So I just want to say, in the Midwest, farmers know that genetic engineering produces a yield drag. So what happened, Monsanto, when they first saw all these studies coming back from public universities, they went on a buying spree and bought up all the companies that had the best seed genetics. So what Bob said is hybrids create yield improvements, and that's what absolutely they do. Henry Wallace is an Iowa guy that eventually became vice president and also Secretary of Agriculture. He hybridized seeds to increase yields. We're not arguing about, labeling hybrids. Hybrids can increase yields. The process of inserting a foreign gene into a crop can actually create a yield drag. And it's nonsense for Bob to sit here and say that GMO soybeans or GMO corn. The fact is, genetic engineering, we do not use it mostly to feed people. I want to say that it's great that Bob is genetically engineered canola, but you shouldn't be eating canola anyway. It's not a health food. It's not good for us. Shouldn't really be eating a lot of soy either. The fact is 40% of the crops that are genetically engineered are used for ethanol, which in Iowa, it's a giant boondoggle for farmers. We call it dethanol. If you know the environment, this is the fastest way to take the best topsoil on the planet and flush it down the rivers into the Mississippi. So we do have a real problem with corporations repeating talking points that are not based on science. And so listen, Bob can talk about a yield improvement, and that's great if he's done it with canola, but it's not even factual in GMO soy and in corn.
Well, I find it really interesting that someone sits here, never picked up a test tube or worked in a lab in his entire life. I've worked about 120 hours a week for 40 years in my laboratory.
I'm proud of you.
Wait a second, it's not an issue. The issue is that you're talking about corporations, you're talking about things that are political, and that's great. I want to talk about science. I'm not interested in talking about what Monsanto's doing or DuPont's doing or Syngenta's doing. I want to talk about science. And frankly, I'm not going to sit here and be insulted and say that I'm a spokesperson for biotechnology, which I'm not. I happen to be an elected member of the National Academy of Sciences based on my scientific record.
Sure.
And I didn't come here to get in this kind of debate in which I'm sitting up here and being insulted by these talking points. But let me just finish.
You're not being insulted.
But let me just finish.
You're saying I'm wrong, I'm saying you're wrong.
No, but I think that
Very
you're
simple.
being insulting to a couple of people. And I think this is really important. There are a lot of people who do work for Monsanto and do work for DuPont and do work for corporations. And these are really serious scientists. And they're not harming people in the environment. They have mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers and children. And these people aren't going to do anything that are going to be able to bring harm using genetic engineering. I think I might have lost my microphone here. Using genetic engineering. The second thing is that I think it's pretty insulting to the farmers that you live around. Sure. They're buying these things voluntarily. They're doing it because it makes good sense to them, and they're doing it because it does increase yield. It does do a good thing for the environment. We can talk about no-till farming. We can talk about reduced pesticide. We can do about all these kinds of things. The issue is what the science is. And every single learned scientific society in the world that says that these things are safe for the environment, have done positive things for the environment, and are safe for human consumption. But you would say that they're not.
Monsanto's evil lies! All lies!
Follow up with that.
Evil lies!
This is supposed to be a polite discourse here.
They control the farmers with their dead seed.
Okay, so let me ask a good question then. So Bob brought up some good points. Let me ask a question here for Dave. Bob brings up a point about what's wrong with some of this genetic engineering. And my question for you is, I've heard about genetic engineering that removes a certain toxin from peanuts, for instance, where children that have peanut allergies won't be susceptible to that anaphylactic shock that results from eating peanuts, or the use of genetically modified ingredients in the production of insulin. My question for you is, there may be some benefits that come from that type of science, and my question is, what's wrong with that?
Well, listen, we're not asking for an end to genetic engineering. We are not trying. The debate here in America, in the United States, in Prop 37 in California, it is about transparency. It is about open access to basic information. Now, the biotech industry tries to hide it. They have rigged the rules of the regulatory agency at the EPA, the FDA, and the USDA. And Bob can claim that that these are just great people doing their job. I get it. There are some good people doing their jobs. But I also know that when you give financial incentives for people, that sometimes facts and scientific facts are not borne out to be true. And I have right here, I have original documents. I wasn't sure what kind of debate this would be if I would be able to pull out original documents, where really the EPA's own scientists, the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, who covers safety of foods, when they first looked at this the process of genetic engineering over 20 years ago, so in the 1980s, the coordinated framework on biotechnology, they started coming up with rules and regulations. In the 90s, they were trying to get the FDA to come up with a system of approvals so they could get these novel new crops that had never been on the market before, get them approved and get them into the marketplace, get them in farmers' fields. So listen, I know farmers that plant Monsanto seeds, My family owns 4 farms in 3 separate states. There have been farmers on my parents' land, on our family's land, that have grown genetic engineered crops. We do not have an argument with these farmers. We recognize that they have a choice to make in a democracy to choose this technology. But I more importantly believe that as citizens, our rights matter more than those of corporations. So what we've had is we've had an absolutely rigging of the regulatory agencies and our political system against us. So Bob, you know, he worked, I wouldn't say he worked, but he used as a spokesperson for Prop 37, where the biotech industry, Monsanto, they spent $46 million to bury the truth with deceptive ads. And so we raised $9 million. And Bob, if you want, you can argue with me all you want on this question of a Prop 37, but I have an article here from a newspaper where you called Prop 37 a Trojan horse, and you said there's an issue with what was the micro ingredients, 0.5%.
Let me say this rule.
So I just want to, you know,
regarding Prop 37, that's the issue of labeling, making it mandatory to label foods as having been genetically modified. And I think our discussion today touches on the labeling issue. What I really wanted us to focus on was the foods themselves. So for instance, when we go to a store like Whole Foods and it says this is genetically modified or not genetically modified, should we care about that? And I really would like us to focus on that point. And what I want to ask you, Bob, if I may, is we're talking about these regulatory structures and studies and government agencies and their involvement in this process. My understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that there is some type of regulatory structure for the food supply in this country. It's FDA, it's various other government agencies, and I just wanted to see if you could speak to that point about who is protecting the food supply, and do you think that is it possible for a scenario like Dave was presenting where that process could be corrected?
Well, I don't believe in political conspiracies, but I don't really think about them very much. I look at it very differently in many respects. What I look at is that